Health Secretary Matt Hancock's penchant for cinema.
But it's been something of a triumph for Health Secretary Matt Hancock for the UK to have got this head start on the vaccine programme. But can you tell me what inspired Matt Hancock's vaccine strategy?
Oh, I know this one.
Yes, go on, Helen.
It is the 2011 film Contagion.
Correct.
Which he watched.
That is not a lie. Let me emphasise that is not a lie. We are making policy based on Hollywood blockbusters.
However, he did note that it was not his, quote, primary source of advice. Instead, was another great 2011 film, Cowboys and Aliens.
After 800 yards, go left on the roundabout. First exit.
At this point, there was mounting evidence that the country, the world, and our species would never truly be the same again, when news broke that a farm in Lancashire had begun renting out goats to attend online Zoom meetings.
Before we move on from COVID issues, on the subject of COVID Zoom meetings, which Zoom
Go
guest
left on the
can
roundabout.
justifiably claim
First
to be
exit.
the greatest of all time?
It's the goat, isn't it?
It is the goat, yes, the goat.
These questions are easier when you give us the answer, I think. No, there's a farm. I was reading about this. There's a farm in this country that was struggling with whatever they normally do, and because of coronavirus. And they've been renting out goats for people to have as a member of their Zoom meeting, and it's £6 for 5 minutes or something like that. Listen, my concern is that I'm not saying that a website that rents out goats for 5 minutes at £6 a pop, you know, it can be an innocent thing. But what I want to know is, why are you clicking that link in the first place? What's your motive?
I've got a good goat fact. They're not waterproof. Did you know that?
How did you find that out, Steve?
Because I went to a farm where there was a goat, and the person who knew about goats said they weren't waterproof. And that's what I learned that day. So you have to keep them covered at night. They're not like other animals, like owls.
But they don't dissolve. I mean...
Could you imagine as the pineapple doesn't matter, but dissolved goat.
Oh, the naive goat farmer on his first day. Oh no! Oh, they've all washed away.
Inform, educate and entertain.
Oh no, there's just the horns left.
Well, there you go. COVID, for all its many flaws as a national and global crisis, has engendered elements of considerable human creativity, ranging from online arts and crafts, via an ability to spot potential supplies of COVID equipment where normal people might have thought they obviously have no relevant expertise and are charging way too much, all the way to this crucial modern-day skill of how to monetize your spare goats. Back in the USA, Joe Biden was inaugurated, becoming the least divisive president of the decade so far, which admittedly is not the highest bar, and it wasn't also quite as clean a clearance as might have been ideal, with Kamala Harris as his history-making vice president. And that strange sound you could hear was half of America fully exhaling for the first time in 4 years, and the other half of America banging its head against a concrete block in frustration and complaining about the nasty block giving them a hurty head.
Hari, as an American in America, what does it feel like to go back to normal?
Oh yeah, it's just like Pompeii after Vesuvius erupted. I mean, he didn't attend the inauguration, which, by the way, was fine by me, just because I watched the inauguration with my 5-month-old, who kicked and screamed and pooped himself repeatedly, so it was like Trump was there the whole time. Trump threw himself a farewell party, because of course he did, and instead of going to the inauguration and on the invitation, he encouraged people to bring at least 5 friends with them, which, first of all, is pathetic, and secondly, only Donald Trump would turn his farewell party into a Ponzi scheme.
And it was no
notable that Trump didn't go to the inauguration. Very, very few presidents have not gone to the inauguration of their successor. Abraham Lincoln was another example, but he had a much, much better excuse.
Trump effortlessly skipped that possibility by never going to the theatre.
The season's turned, and as sure as furious reactions follow anything happening anywhere ever nowadays, spring followed winter. The season brought with it a slew of sleaze schmozzles and allegations of government corruption and malfeasance that I'm delighted to say are a distant memory as we talk to you now in the pure, unadulterated month of December. First, there was David Cameron and the Greensill lobbying scandal.
Not to be competitive, as an African, I think this is a very low level of corruption. It's very pathetic. What amounts to getting British outrage? The man works for this company and he starts lobbying. But if I hired an ex-prime minister and they refused to use their connections, I would fire them.
We've even got a word for it, we're so used to it, they call it the chumocracy, don't they? Which is sort of the chumocracy. I mean, given that most people in government went to the best possible schools, it's not just a chumocracy, it's a pedigree chumocracy.
Greensill was followed up with revelations that Boris Johnson had texted James Dyson, Viscount vacuum cleaner himself, for help with ventilators in return for, quotes, fixing a tax matter.
Can you imagine how good a Dyson ventilator would be? The Hoovers have got cyclone technology. A Dyson ventilator would have hurricane technology, and you'd have to strap your head to a pole to stop internal decapitation. And it would tear the teeth from your gums and blast them into the pit of your stomach and fill you with more oxygen than you've ever had in your life in under 3 minutes. It would be
And then came the parody Prime Minister's Downing Street flat refurbishment.
And question one this week goes to both teams. Who has been accused of being out of order in his attempt to get his house in order?
This sounds like it might be your lead story about Boris Johnson and his flat refurbishment.
Correct.
Or possibly Carrie Simmons' flat refurbishment. And the scandal that this has created about a nation outraged that on top of everything else they've had to endure, they've now had to see John Lewis bad-mouthed. Since the death of the Queen Mother, there have been very few really genuinely sacred institutions in this country, but I think it's fair to say that calling John Lewis a nightmare is just a step too far and probably will bring down this government. Most of us, I think, seeing the whole story, have been largely baffled, having previously assumed that Boris slept in a basket most nights.
It's revealed a third strand in British society that I didn't realise existed. There were either people who thought that John Lewis was nice, or people who thought that John Lewis was too expensive. I didn't know there was a version above, where they're like, oh, I could not possibly live in a house with John Lewis furniture.
I do have a friend that works in Westminster, and I've heard off the record that most of the money's actually been spent on a fridge that's large enough for Boris to hide in whenever he and Kerry have a fight.
So that is 2 points to Team Sleaze, plus an extra 2 points for asking for more points before the show, and paying me a bit of extra money, so it's 4 points.
And we could go on, but instead we're going to leave a gap here for you to remember another sleazier story about the more ethics-averse elements of our government, political system, COVID supply chain or football pyramid, and then for you to briefly feel hollow inside before we move on to something else. All done? Feeling better? Good. Let's move on. It's fair to say that democracy is still experiencing a few teething troubles, just 2.5 millennia into its young life, but Britain marched to the polls once again in May for Super Thursday, or some of Britain did, not really march, kind of shuffle with absolutely no enthusiasm whatsoever.
It's hard, isn't it, to get excited about local elections? It's a bit like with football. I can get excited about the World Cup, but anything else I can't really. And calling it Super Thursday is just stupid. Nobody's going to be staying up all night tonight to find out who their police commissioner is.
When people are bored, I think local elections are called local elections in the same way that anaesthesia is called local anaesthesia.
in that you kind of want to be aware of what's going on, but at the end you wish you'd slept for the whole thing.
Keir Starmer celebrated 1 year allegedly in charge of the Labour Party, a time in which his critics claim he's cut through to the broader public like a cucumber through a rhinoceros. He celebrated his anniversary in the traditional manner by getting thrown out of a pub in golf.
Apparently it's even more, I don't really have anything on this, this is just pure gossip, this is between us guys. It turns out that he wasn't randomly walking around pubs. Keir Starmer had been invited to that pub by one of the other landlords. And I know, crazy landlord hadn't been told about it, so he wasn't in what they say these days is the loop. So he was probably transferring a lot of his emotions about his sense of betrayal from his business partner as much as his anger at Keir Starmer's policies, which, as we know, we don't know.
Well, as we battle against Omicron this Christmas, let's cast our minds back to the summer, when we first decided to stop naming virus variants after where we want to think they came from, and instead name them after bits of the Greek alphabet. And that's fair enough for me. That alphabet helped spark the evolution of European civilization, without which we'd all still be perfectly happily living in hedges and worshipping worms and whatever it is we used to do in those days.
This really irritates me. If you don't know, I actually was a virologist before I was a comedian, and people aren't stupid, and I wish they would stop treating us as such. There already exists established nomenclature systems for the naming and tracking of these variants, like, for example, the Indian, which is known as B16172, or G45B16172, or G452RB3, or 21AS478K, but now we gotta remember Delta.
Right, the score is now 111 for 2. Oh no, sorry, I'm reading the wrong score.
Our series in June ended on a classic cliffhanger. Would lockdown be lifted, or would hope fall to its death off the Reichenbach Falls of reality?
With the scores tantalisingly tied at 13 points all, we come to the final question of the series. Always good to end any series on a cliffhanger, so here is our cliffhanger question. Should the relaxation of lockdowns be delayed? Tune in September for the answer.
It's only fans under maybe, isn't
much
it?
was recriminated in the aftermath of Joe Biden's decision to withdraw American troops from Afghanistan, bringing to a close a two-decade tragedy without even being able to slap a mission accomplished sticker on it, as no one could really remember what the original mission was and therefore couldn't tell if it had been accomplished or not. In the UK, however, the most enthusiastically dug up bone of contention was the fate of an alpaca.
It's been a story that's really touched the nation, Geronimo, the alpaca.
Oh, yeah,
what did he mean to you personally?
I was a fan of his hair. I thought it was just, you don't often see the kind of Bobby Ewing from Dallas look these days. The full kind of Graham Souness, if you will. And Geronimo the alpaca was rocking it well.
I appreciated the delightful consistency of the British people, who are totally resistant to any suggestion we might all go vegetarian or vegan to save the planet, but one disease-ridden alpaca and we're practically marching on Downing Street. It was very moving to see.
Can one eat the alpaca?
You can eat anything once.
I think whenever I hear the word destroyed and Geronimo, I feel like something's been launched out of a cannon.
The way you would have wanted to go. People claim that the positive tests for the bovine tuberculosis were inaccurate, very much a kind of Shakespearean TB or not TB confusion. Are we all done on the alpaca? I'll back it in then. Yes, this is the...
Autumn, not always the chirpiest of seasons to be fair, was significantly enlivened by Emma Raducanu, who achieved one of the most astonishing sporting feats of all time by anyone from anywhere, let alone by a teenager from Bromley, winning the US Open as a qualifier without dropping a set, which only goes to show, as we all suspected, sport is way, way better than reality. And if you're still unconvinced, ask yourself this: who did you more enjoy watching go about their work this year, Raducanu or Raab? Point proved. As the News Quiz year drew to an end, fuel became the must-have accessory for all fashion-conscious cars, leading to fights on the forecourts as the nation ran perilously short of supplies of traditional British staples, such as petrol, stoicism, manners, and even a vague sense of communal cooperation. At one point, a life-size cardboard cutout of action movie star Vin Diesel was stolen from outside a multiplex in Tunbridge Wells, shredded and shoved by hand directly into someone's engine, and heartbroken fuel fans were left desperately begging service station staff to just describe the smell of petrol to them, whilst whimpering, "I miss it so much." And millions of people were plunged into uncertainty and a mountain of unwanted admin. Is there any other sort? After energy companies started disappearing out of the free market's leaky back pocket. Should we be concerned about our dependence on Russia for our energy, bearing in mind this is a country that not so long ago killed 30 million of its own people just to keep a lid on experimental poetry?
I mean, we should, but we're supposed to be weaning ourselves off gas anyway, aren't we, right? You know, been saying for years we've got to burn less gas. Now there's this sort of terrible crisis because we're going to be forced to burn less gas. And you might think the government would be saying, insulate, get heat pumps, let's take advantage of this using less gas. But instead they're saying, no, we'll subsidise the gas. Keep burning lots and lots and lots of gas. And it's not just
have we tested for coronavirus in the last 14 days?
To run out of power to make all these things.
Me?
To sell to us.
Yeah, because we did it on the 28th, didn't we?
Because we haven't got any power. So it's... I'm deeply confused. I think what we're going to have to do...
No, it says, have we been tested?
No. Just burn things like iPhones and flat screen TVs instead of gas, and then we'll have enough power to run the new ones that we're buying and everything will be okay.
Well, that sounded like someone was so impressed with the idea they've already called it in somewhere. What this week saw the return of Q?
It's a clever one, isn't it? It could be Bond, or it could be the Q, it could be the terrible shortage of something that we're not short of at all, petrol.
Well, they're both correct, but the even more correct answer is the petrol answer, so I'll give you 2 points there. Well done. Did any of you panic buy anything?
I've just enjoyed watching it. It's been like Mad Max for Mondeos. Fun.
No, I don't have a car, so it didn't really affect me. But I walked past a petrol station yesterday, and just loads of strange men scrapping with each other out in the street. Sorry, did I say petrol station? I meant the Labour Party conference.
Let's look in a little more detail at what Starmer specifically said. I've got some snippets from his speech with some words taken out. Our panelists get 1 point if they can tell me what he actually said, and 2 points if they can tell me what I've decided he should have said. So, for example, this...
We guarantee that every young person gets to see a...
Let's find out what he actually said.
We guarantee that every young person gets to see a careers advisor.
But what he should have said was world-ending apocalypse. Yeah. So let's throw this to our panelists. First we'll go to Matt and Alan on Team Panic Stations. Here's the quote.
I've spent my entire working life trying to get...
What were the missing words there?
Was it a little bit taller? He started with platform shoes and then he's got like a rack, but it's just making absolutely no difference.
Not Iraq again, Alan.
Still tearing the Labour Party apart. Let's
After 500 yards, go left on the roundabout. Second exit.
He should have said, according to me, is I spent my entire working life trying to get my own headed notepaper. Let's move on.
When I was at school, I had with Fatboy Slim.
Go left on the roundabout. Second exit.
When I was at school, I had pillow fights in my underwear with
When I was at school, I had a leadership pack like that one Tony and Gordon had with Fatboy Slim.
That could save the Labour Party, man. Let's find out what he did say.
When I was at school, I had music lessons with Fatboy Slim.
Music lessons? What he should have said, of course, was when I was at school, I had several erotic time travel escapades with Fatboy Slim.
I would pay to watch those.
The news quiz year ended in October, so we'll keep stealing the last 2 months of the year from our calendar. Nothing much ever happens in the last couple of months of the year, does it? No, so that brings us up to date and ready for the news quiz to ring in 2022 with a new series next week. Before we go, just time to bring you some breaking news, which is that the news quiz is about to play the breaking news highlights from 2021.
Just some breaking news reaching us. Alan Titchmarsh has revealed that after 40 years of trying, he has finally learned how to photosynthesize. The former Gardener's Well presenter said he was thrilled to finally be able to oxygenate a room and could now survive solely in the sun.
After 500 yards, cross the roundabout. Second exit.
Slightly disturbing news while we've been on air. Hugh Edwards' frown has slipped off his face and is now large in Broadcasting House.
Cross the roundabout. Second exit.
Last night's news at 10. Fell onto the floor and scuttled into the darkness. Edwards has said he will miss the frown, which has become a close friend and confidant during the COVID crisis, and said he looked forward to being able to express surprise and happiness again. Just a bit of breaking news. Rishi Sunak has announced that to compensate for the cancellation of Christmas 2020, he's brought forward Christmas 2067 to April of this year. The Chancellor explained, I don't know how the people in 2067 will deal with it. They haven't complained when I've nicked all their money, so I reckon we can get away with it.
There you go. I'm sure you will all join me.
Cross the roundabout. Second exit. Then turn left.
And think about what you've done, you ridiculous year. So